Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I am your host, Eric Fisher, and this is the show where we talk to the people behind the productivity. This week I'm talking with Laura Roeder of Edgar. And if you're not familiar with Edgar, it is a social media scheduling tool that does one specific scheduling thing and does it very well. We'll talk about her transition from a designer into a CEO, as well as some of the quote-unquote work-life balance and delegation styles that she has when working with her team and working with her husband even. Before we get into that conversation, I want to say thank you to Aweber for supporting this episode of Beyond the To-Do List. Aweber is a leading email marketing platform for growing businesses and entrepreneurs. Aweber has an awesome online resource landing page for anyone who wants to be a better digital marketer. Even if you don't consider yourself to be a digital marketer, but you work in the digital realm in terms of creating even tangible products like art or writing that you want to get out there and spread the word about, Aweber has free videos and downloadable checklists to help you get the word out about your awesome stuff that you have created. To get to that, you just go to aweber.com/to-do. That's aweber.com/to-do. What you'll find there is free videos, downloadable checklists that will walk you through getting your first online course up, creating your first YouTube video, designing your first shareable images, creating your first Facebook ad about your product, or even recording your first podcast episode. Again, to get those free videos and downloadable checklists, head on over to aweber.com/to-do. That's aweber.com/TODO. Thanks again to Aweber for supporting this episode of Beyond the To-Do List. Now enjoy this conversation with Laura Roeder. Well, this week it is my privilege to welcome Laura Roeder to the show. Laura, welcome.
Thank you, Edgar. Edgar.
That's great.
I've never done that before.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you, Eric.
You're welcome. And that contextually, that is very funny because the software that you create is called Edgar, and my name is Eric, and there is some similarity there. So,
I've got Edgar on the brain.
Yes,
clearly.
That's awesome. Usually I'd edit that. Usually I'd Edgar that out, but no, it's more fun to leave that stuff in. Trust me. So I've let the cat out of the bag. You're from Edgar, but that's like way down the line of like your story. Like you were doing a ton of stuff before that and have kind of inched your way into creating and then making Edgar successful. So let's go back. Let's go back to basically you had like a design job and then you decided to quit that and launch your own business. Why? Most people, if they're a designer, are like, no, that's what I go to school to do and want to be, right?
Yeah, I was not your typical designer because the thing I didn't like about my design job is that I only did design all day, which,
right.
Which I think is what a lot of designers love about having a job like that. But I was always very interested in the strategy side and the marketing side and, the kind of bigger picture branding and things like that. So I thought it was very limiting just moving pixels around basically.
Mm-hmm. You had the talent to do it, but you felt like you were called to do much more than that.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we shouldn't say more as though, doing design is some sort of like inferior path or something. It wasn't for me. And I kind of explored, okay, maybe I want a different career. Maybe I want to be like, I was at an agency. Maybe I want to be on the account services side. But I thought, no, I like doing web design, but I just want to do the whole client interaction piece as well. So I kind of figured, well, I can wait 10 years in this career path until I'm like a creative director and I'm in on the client strategy meetings, or I can just work for myself and then I'll, for better or for worse, get to do every aspect. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you launched out to start your own first business. Was that what B School was, or was it something different?
No, that was a few years before. Yeah.
Okay.
So I started working for myself first about 10 years ago. So I've been doing it a while and I haven't had any real jobs ever since that one. So yeah, I did freelance web design for a while, and then I went into social media consulting, which quickly turned into social media training products. I met Marie Forleo, the co-founder of B School, we started B School together. I continued with the training business, and then I launched Edgar in 2014.
Was it the fact that like social media was the buzz thing, or was it just that, I mean, because that's creating social media software is kind of, I mean, again, still digital when it comes to like design, but it's pretty separated. You know what I mean? Like it's a pretty far separation. What took you from the design to, doing design work to creating software as a service?
Yeah, I mean, so it definitely happened in very small baby steps, very organically for me, along the past 10 years. So the way it happened is I was creating websites for clients, for local businesses in Chicago. And when I made them a website, I would like talk to them about how they were going to get traffic to the site. Once a prospect finds your site, what's the sales process going to be? I thought that's just what you did when you made a website. Like I literally just didn't know, what services people delivered when they made a website. So I just thought, well, I'm making them this website. I better make sure that the content's good and that people are finding it and it's search optimized and all that stuff. So basically I was doing online marketing consulting, just learning as I went. And I did this for myself and businesses, but I didn't see that as the service. I saw making the website as the service. The consulting was just sort of, random advice that I gave for free along with making the website. And in 2007, 2008, social media really started to become a thing that a lot of people were asking me about. I've heard you can use Twitter for your business. I've heard you can use Facebook for your business, or when Facebook fan pages first came out, people wanted to know about that. And I just sort of figured those things out, and people kept coming to me, I guess because they'd heard that I knew something about it. And then people started saying to me, you could get paid just for teaching people about social media. And I thought that sounded like a sweet business.
Right.
I thought that sounded a lot easier than making a website. So I'm like, okay, if people will pay me just to tell them how social media works, sign me up. So I started doing, like I said, consulting, evolved into training, evolved into software. So those were kind of the baby steps that fill up that big gap.
At what point did the idea for Edgar pop into your head, and how long from that inception point to launch was the timeline?
Over the years, we had developed this social media marketing process that we were using for our own company, the training company. Obviously, we did a lot of social media marketing ourselves. So we had this process. I mean, Eric, I wouldn't be surprised if you've done something very similar. Most people doing social at a larger level often have like a spreadsheet or a sort of complex set of documents where they have like all the different social updates so they can edit them and store them. We had this spreadsheet with all the different categories, the types of updates we would send, and then we'd cycle through the categories, copying and pasting everything to a social media tool. Do you do anything like this? Does any of those?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, we've kind of evolved to trying to do it less complex like that, but yeah.
Yeah. So we were doing this process. It was very complex. We were also teaching people this process, and they were paying to learn it, and they were implementing it in their business, but there was a lot of manual labor involved. And I honestly didn't really understand why the tools didn't do more of it, but I just sort of figured that they couldn't. I thought like it wasn't possible because some of the parts, especially like storing a library of all your updates in the tool, that just seemed very obvious to me. It seemed weird that I had to store my updates outside of the tool if I wanted to access them again. So I was talking about it with my husband, who's a Ruby on Rails developer, which is how you make web software if you're listening and you're not familiar. And he basically said, I remember he said, I can make that in a week. And I was like, what? Are you serious? He's like, yeah, I could build that. And so, I mean, it just from there, as soon as we started talking about it, which was like December 2013, he started building it that January and we launched it in July. It was just like very obvious that this was an idea worth pursuing because people were already doing the cumbersome process. So we figure, well, if we make software that does that process for them automatically, that will probably be something people would pay for. That
actually now kind of clicks in my mind is when I remember seeing it come out there because I had just been on board working for Social Media Examiner, and really, really knee deep into working with social media. So I was really paying attention to the space much more than before. And I remember it coming out about then. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Basically,
you and your husband built it. You've grown into much more. I mean, so from, let's see, summer of 2014 to now, let's say late 2016, in the last 2 years that it's been out there, your team has grown.
Yeah. So when we launched it, we had a small team from the training business, maybe like 6 or 7 people that we transitioned over to the software business. Now our team is 17 people. So it's grown really quickly.
So here's the thing. This is where productivity comes in, I think, where prior to that point, kind of you're doing a one-stop shop of your training individually, and it's just you, and you've got to manage you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that for sure. But then you're basically tasked with making sure everybody else, as they come on board, is doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, is your team all in one place, or is it spread out?
Everyone works from home in North America.
So there's the clincher right there, because I do that too. I am part of a team that is spread out like that, and I'm always looking for ways to do better work when I'm by myself standing at my desk here, and then also leading a team. What kind of systems and tools and things, and even share some failures if you have to, of what you've learned and how you are, optimizing these people getting their stuff done, as well as you yourself?
We're big on all the communication tools that a lot of online teams use. I mean, we hang out in Slack all day, every day. We're really big on hopping on video chats a lot. Like whenever basically you start to have any kind of back and forth on Slack, it's like usually like, okay, let's get on a video chat and make sure that everyone's on the same page. You know, looking at that confused face that the other person is making is really valuable. Or that moment when you're like, wait, we were talking about 2 different things, weren't we? Like, yes, we were. I think that's really valuable. We also meet up in person twice a year as a team too. And we stick to pretty normal work structure. Like we work during the daytime hours, obviously East Coast, West Coast, there's some variation there, but we have a team-wide meeting on video chat every Monday. The other departments, check in either daily or weekly, depending on kind of their department rhythm on video or on Slack. So I think we operate a lot like an in-person company. I think we've actually moved to operating as much as possible like an in-person company while still having those upsides of people working from home and having more flexibility with their schedule.
That's cool. What kind of struggles have you seen from going to building and managing a remote team when you never had to manage anyone before?
Yeah, I mean, luckily it's been gradual for me. But I mean, yeah, when I started working for myself, I had never hired anyone. I had never been anyone's superior in any way. But I think a lot of that honestly was a blessing in disguise because I never had to unlearn bad corporate behavior. And a lot of the ways that I've managed people has always been just respect people, assume that people are doing their best. Our work environment has no drama, no upset. Something I always say to my team is like, we're a social media company. We're not saving people's lives. So, we can't screw anything. Like the worst thing we can screw up as a company is if, the software fails and someone's social media updates don't go out. And that's really bad because that's what they pay us to do. And we make sure that doesn't happen. But like, we don't, you know what I mean? You don't need to be that upset about it.
Yeah. One post not going out doesn't keep somebody from getting their medication or some other,
Right. So I mean, I guess as you can tell, like I'm pretty laid back, and I think that's important in the atmosphere of the team.
That's awesome. You mentioned Slack, obviously. Jumping on face-to-face meetings. Do you have any preferred tools?
Yeah, we usually use Google Hangouts if it's a smaller group, but it doesn't work that well with like once you get more than 5 or 6 people. Right. So we use Zoom.
Oh,
for
perfect. I love Zoom.
Yeah, it's a great tool. Any
other like remote tools that really are just like awesome?
So we use Help Scout for our customer service, which we love. We use Intercom for doing like in-app messaging, Google Docs, of course, for all of our documents, Confluence for our wiki, although we don't really love that much. Okay. We're always looking for something better. Yeah, that's like our basic stack that we use.
So tell me a little bit about what like your workspace. I mean, is it just you? I mean, your husband helped you build it, but is he still working at Edgar, or is he doing his own thing?
Yeah, so he built the initial version, and now he serves as CTO of the company, overseeing a development team. But both of us actually only work part-time. We have a 1-year-old.
Nice.
So we parent, well, I mean, you parent 24/7, but yes. We actively parent part-time and work part-time.
Cool. So what does that workspace look like to you guys? I mean, do you have just like a home office, or do you have a space outside of the home that you go to, or?
We're always experimenting with that because we're pretty nomadic. We actually just moved back to my hometown of Austin a few months ago, but we travel. My husband's from the UK, so we always are in the UK at least like 2 months out of the year, and we do a decent amount of other travel, and we like to go back to California where we moved from. So we don't have like this really strong home setup. But yeah, for now, we just have a home office that we work out of. We're kind of checking out co-working spaces now too. But yeah, we're not picky about it. We'll work from wherever.
Nice. That's good because, that's one of those things where some people, they kind of feel like, well, I've got to have my office that I go to and my work is there and I leave it there. And how do you feel about that where, you guys kind of try to, again, run it like a 9 to 5, but you flex the hours, in other words, because the tools allow you to.
Right. I mean, that is something actually that we're very strong on at our company. So if you look at our careers page, it says no evenings, no weekends. And our company does not send emails in the evening. It's actually sort of funny that that's this big like, wow, look at us, because that shouldn't be such an unusual thing. But I think that sort of thing is important for people to learn kind of top down, because you can say don't email in the evening, but then if the owners of the company are always sending you emails in the evening, then it's sort of implied that maybe you're supposed to respond. So we're actually very good about that stuff company-wide. I mean, of course, what's harder for my husband and I is not to talk about work all the time, because we're entrepreneurs. We love what we do. Our 1-year-old is our first child. And I mean, I think something that both of us discovered very early on is that for us, it doesn't, some people will be like working on their laptop, kind of have the kid in the background, like playing with the blocks, kind of doing both at the same time. That stresses me out so bad. It does not work for me at all. I just find myself like flustered trying to do both things. So he's really helped create some stronger boundaries. And it's forced me to be much more focused with my work time. Because like I said, I only work part-time. So it's like, okay, I have these 4 hours. I better get everything done. And then when I'm with him, I'm not half doing work, because it's just pointless. All you can do is like sort of open an email on your phone and kind of worry about it, but not, you're not able to have the actual conversation right then. So I really try to be focused with my time.
Yeah. You'd open your phone and touch your email multiple times, which breaks the rules of inbox zero in many, many ways.
Right.
So that transition, do you feel like by moving into that, part-time work and saying, okay, I've got 4 hours, here's what I'm going to do with these 4 hours versus, hey, I've got to go work for 4 hours, which is kind of open and vague. Do you feel like you're attacking stuff and getting stuff done more because you're compressing the time? Or work into the time, I should say?
Yeah, I do. I mean, something that's been interesting about launching this company is I was pregnant when we launched. I was on 3 months maternity leave, obviously within the first year of the company. So I had to be very deliberate in how I crafted the roles at the company, because you can't just launch a product and then sort of stall out for 3 months in the very early days. So I was very, very deliberate in making sure that I wasn't the bottleneck for any decisions. Our team, the way we run things is very autonomous. If you're in charge of the blog, it's yours. If you're in charge of social media, it's yours, right? If you're a developer, it's yours to create and fix the product. So it actually has been a great constraint into making sure that I really practice some of these ways to, I guess, do management that I believe are effective.
What are you delegating out to people, and then what are you not delegating out?
Right now, I serve as CEO of the company, and I'm also overseeing marketing, although we're working on replacing me for that now. What does a founder do? What does a CEO do? I feel like I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
And it's something that I talk to other founders about all the time. Like, what do you do all day? Because you read things like setting the vision, and it's like, what does that mean? Like,
right.
how do you set a vision for 4 hours? So, I mean, what I love to do, and what I'm crafting my work towards more and more, my sort of dream scenario is that I show up at work and I coach and mentor my team. The other day, the person who handles operations and basically HR for the company, she was thinking of ways to get people to use their vacation time, because we always have like in December, everyone taking all their vacation that they forgot to use. So she called me. She was like, I have some ideas on how to do this. What do you think of those ideas? Do you have any ideas? That was so fun. I love doing stuff like that. Like the department heads can come to me and get feedback, ask for strategic advice. I'm helping them to do the planning for the year. That's really fun work for me.
That's cool. From what I hear, that's kind of what that ends up being like, is that you end up doing these things that only somebody who's at the very top, who can really lead the entire core team, like who can lead the core team, and then those people can then lead the people below them, etc. That's what they end up doing, is they in other words, empower the people right below them to take on responsibility and decision-making processes, and you trust them that they are going to do those well, and then you're free to do vision casting for 4 hours.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. I always try to like work with my team to promote that idea that it's their decision. I was talking to the person who heads up customer service the other day, and she's like, Laura, I want to ask you about something. She's like, I know you're going to say that it's my call, but like, I just want to know what you would do. Because she's so used to me being like, just, what do you feel? What do you want to do? She's like, just tell me, just tell me what you would actually do. So yeah, I think it's important to constantly be reminding people that. Otherwise you end up as this huge bottleneck in the business. And a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs have set up these structures where they have to be, the final yes on every decision. And it really mucks up the business. Yeah.
Well, you said it right there, the bottleneck. That if every decision has to come to them to be a yes or a no, then there's a queue.
Yeah.
And that person's the only person who gets to push the yes or no button.
Right.
So, yeah. I do admire the fact that the person knew what you were going to say, but still wanted to talk through it with you to learn from you, basically, It wasn't. It sounded to me like the way you're describing it. It sounds like they were saying, "I don't really feel like I need to get your permission, but what I want is your guidance."
Yeah, and I mean, yes, I think that's a lovely way to phrase it, right? Guidance, not permission.
That's really cool. You talked about not sending emails in the evening. Does that apply to the weekend as well? Like your evenings, no weekends with email?
Yeah.
Wow. And I know you're a huge proponent of something called Inbox Zero, which
I love. Our whole team has to do Inbox Zero.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Inbox Zero. I know that, some people, I mean, the originator who I've had on my show, the guy who coined the term, again, it wasn't about, it's the Inbox Zero term is not, or at least it started off not being, about that you had zero emails. However, that's where it kind of morphed into, and that's cool. I mean, it's good to have zero emails because it means hopefully it means you've done what you're supposed to do, not just archived them all. But it's moved into, having zero emails, and I'm not opposed to that. How do we get there, though?
Yeah, so I'll put a link. I wrote an article about this a few years ago. We'll definitely put it in the show notes. But basically, the whole idea of Inbox Zero is that you are ensuring that nothing's been forgotten and no balls have been dropped because stuff is just sitting, buried down in your inbox, because that you're missing communication if you have this giant inbox, right? Because something's in there.
Yes.
Emails are sitting in there. So yeah, the way that you get to Inbox Zero is you have to take action on each email, which is why it's so intimidating for people. So that means, that you are storing the information somewhere relevant, that you're answering the question with the decision, that you're choosing not to answer the email, which is another huge one that people have a really hard time with, especially if you blog and you put yourself out there in a more public way. You'll get a good amount of people just sort of like saying hi or asking you questions. You do not have to respond to those. As evil as it may sound, you might just not have time to do that. I always find the hardest emails for me to clear from Inbox Zero are like emails from friends where they've written me this really nice email about their life, and I feel like I have to write back this really long, nice email about my life, and then it just sits there, which is really dumb because I should just send them an email being like, "It's so good to hear from you, cool," and like that would be fine.
Yeah, so not letting any balls drop and not having anything in there. I mean, the whole idea is, and I alluded to this earlier, is the touch it once idea, where you don't look at it and decide, oh, I don't know what to do with this, and then leave it in your inbox because it takes up your like mental RAM. you know?
When you do it over and over and over again.
Right. Yes. One of them is probably not a big idea. Not a bad idea. Like I like to triage. If you're familiar with the term, whereas I'll scan my entire because I've had hopefully not that many emails come in from the last time I was in there at a scheduled time. Hopefully, what I can do is just scan and say, okay, of these, hopefully like 10 at most emails. Are any of these ones that I don't need to do anything about, and can I just swipe those away immediately and get it down to 7, 5, 3, whatever? And then at the 3, if I really do have to look and see what each of those are first before deciding what I need to do with them, because an action is required, I should say. Yeah, then I'm kind of like, okay, well, let me hit reply. This is why I love Gmail's send and archive. Or something like Boomerang for Gmail or one of the other things where
I love Boomerang.
Yeah, because then it's like, okay, one, I can send something back to them and get get more information because I don't have enough to make my own decision yet. But then two, I can get it out of my inbox at the same time.
Right. And another little email tips, what I do is I have two totally separate. I have like a personal email and a work email, and I don't put them on the same account. So, you can have like your Gmail and you can have them all coming into the same inbox. I don't do that. They're on two totally different inboxes. And my work email has zero fluff. It has no subscriptions, to any newsletters. I don't publish that email publicly anywhere. So it doesn't have any like random people emailing me. I get salespeople that find it, but those are just archived immediately. And too bad for them.
You don't mark them for spam?
I should mark all of them for spam. And then I have my personal inbox, and that one is a hot mess. That's where I do, all your online shopping notifications, any newsletters I want to sign up for. And I just don't look at that one, honestly. Like, it's a hot mess. It's fine. It doesn't need to be cleared out. I can just hit archive everything so often. If a friend emails me on there, I just forward it to my work email so it'll actually get dealt with. And that works really well for me, so that like the email that I'm working with at work during the day doesn't just have, these random newsletters and random fluff in it.
That's good. And that also then is a good way to keep that separation of, hey, I'm not working right now, so I'm not going to open the work email app. I'm going to open my personal.
Right, exactly. And also at work, you're not distracted with like, ooh, my thing shipped from Amazon. Like, I was going to look at the other thing too. I'll just go over there.
Good idea. Those boundaries, I'm telling you. What other boundaries like that do you have then? Or what are you maybe even trying to see, or maybe you've discovered you need to create a boundary for?
I don't have social media apps on my phone, which is like,
what?
I feel like I'm not supposed to admit that as a social media person.
I was going to say.
Yeah, every so often, because you can take them on and off too, is like, I feel like what everyone forgets. Like, you can delete Facebook from your phone. If you want to add it back on, just reinstall it. So the only thing that's hard is for sharing pictures, but I use Google Photos. And so like I always have the photos on my laptop so I can go into Facebook and, upload a photo if I want to. But I just really don't like killing time on my phone. I think it's a really bad habit. I'd rather just be reading a book, or even like I kill time on the internet sometimes, and that's okay. It's a, dumb, pleasurable activity that I have. But I just find, especially if it's so easy to like lay in bed and be on your phone for an hour just looking at nothing. And I just don't need that in my life.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree. And I have deleted Facebook from my phone a few different times, but it always ends up being back there. And I always think, well, I gotta be able to like, and I always justify it, I guess. So that actually is a really cool tip. I hadn't even thought about the Google Photos idea, that you could be out and about doing the photos and have them then automatically syncing to a desktop where then you would sit down with purpose to do a social media update.
Right. Because, I like to post pictures of my son on my personal Facebook, but then I'm doing that deliberately instead of just killing time.
Yeah. What about the future? I know that, you guys are doing lots of great stuff at Edgar. What kind of other, goals do you have in mind? Or I know that you also like to reverse engineer your goals. What does that process look like?
Yeah, so reverse engineering your goals means picking an outcome that you want and then basically guessing what it might take to get there, and breaking down your smaller goals like that. So, and a lot of it is doing the math, which I think a lot of people don't really do. So I'll share one of our goals at Edgar. We have a big goal to get to 5 million annual revenue this year. So it's a pretty big jump. So instead of just being like, okay, well, we're going to try really hard this year. Have at it, guys.
Do better this year.
Right. We look at, okay, if we want 5 million revenue, how many customers is that? And then, okay, how many leads do we need to get a customer? What's our churn? How many customers do we lose every month? So then you have these real numbers of, okay, to achieve this goal, we're going to need to get this many new customers every day, and we need to decrease our churn rate by this amount. And then you have these much more concrete action items to take. And I mean, you can do that obviously with things in your personal life as well. I mean, fitness is a really obvious example, right? Instead of your goal being lose 10 pounds, it's like, okay, well, that's the eventual outcome. But to break that down, I'm going to, start by taking a walk every day, or I'm going to stop eating dessert for the next week, or whatever it is, the things that you think might lead to that eventual outcome.
That makes sense. I like that. I love the idea that you're, quote unquote, the way you're saying, do the math. Because a lot of us, we don't do the math, and we don't like math, first of all. And it's not like you're talking literal math, although it can very much involve it. But that idea of really looking at where it is you're wanting to go, or what it is you're wanting to do in the short term or even long term, but then reverse engineering that and saying, what does it take to make more money? We're going to make more money this year, or we're going to work harder. But yeah, to actually say, to have broken it down like you did, I really like that.
Well, and a lot of people don't really take the time to look at what's realistic. Like, yeah, maybe you have a goal, you have 1,000 social media followers and you want to get to 2,000, but how long did it take you to get to that 1,000? A lot of people don't really bother to look. Maybe you're going to hit your goal without doing anything different, because that's the pace you've been on already. But it also brings up this point, which it sounds so obvious, but it's so easy to miss, that if you want a different outcome, you need to do something differently. If you keep doing the same actions, you'll continue on the same trajectory. So if you're already getting more customers, you will continue to get more, but at the same rate. So if you want to double the amount of customers you get this month over last month, you can't just do the same stuff that you did last month.
Exactly.
You're going to get the same amount of customers.
Yeah. I mean, you'll grow, and there is kind of a, eventual, I don't know if I'd call it a tipping point per se, because you've got built-in, aggregated momentum from month over month or year over year. But yeah, you're still talking about ways to play addition instead of what you're talking about with goals, which is like multiplication.
Right. You can have a business or whatever those goals are in your life that do just, I eventually want to have 1,000 customers and I will get there doing what I do now. Cool. I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. You've made your plan and you're following it. It's just, I think people are often, it's like you hear the dream big, and then people are like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to dream big. But then it never gets back to okay, but what am I going to do differently every single day to make this big dream happen?
Are there any other big goals or things you've broken down recently or you're wanting to aim for?
Something sort of interesting with Edgar is I think a big part of our success has been that we've been so focused on solving this one problem really well. So there's a lot of things that you do in social media that our tool doesn't do. We're not a listening tool. We're not a tool to find influencers. We're not a tool to provide customer service. And we've done that very deliberately and been very focused on, we're the best tool for content marketers. We're the best tool to recycle your content. So a lot of the improvements that we make at Edgar are things like, in the past year, we totally redid how our calendar displays. So that's much better. We actually redid a lot of the back end so that your queue builds faster, which is a very boring thing to talk about, but actually has a big impact on the experience of the customer. So I think our announcements often aren't that exciting,
yes.
But that's how you make a really solid product.
Well, so let's get into that a little bit here, kind of in the downward turn towards the end of our time. Let's talk specifically about that issue that Edgar solves and how it solves it so well.
I mean, the way I would put the issue that Edgar solves, bottom line, is all of you out there listening who spend so much time creating a podcast, creating a blog post, you send it out once. The first time you write it, maybe you send it out a few times that first week and then never again. And it just dies on the vine. And all the people who haven't seen it, who are following you, don't get a chance to see it. That's the problem that Edgar solves.
This is not a new issue where there's been other tools out there that people have loved and then some have very vocally, I guess, that people that I know at least, have switched over to Edgar for a very specific reason. And I think that has to do with kind of your I don't know what's the proper term for it, but your
Like upload and editing.
Yes. Yeah. That and like your hopper, like where you hold everything and bring it back up again. Not to mention the calendar.
Right. So so the way that we solve that problem at Edgar is you store all of your updates in a categorized library, and then Edgar handles refilling your queue from your updates. So with other tools, your queue always runs out, or you're scheduling each post manually, and then after those are done, you have to go back through and schedule them all manually again. Where Edgar is really different is you load up, for example, all of your old blog posts, and then you tell Edgar, send out one of my blog posts Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the evenings. And then Edgar pulls through and just cycles through them over and over again. You can also upload from a spreadsheet, you can upload from RSS, you can do bulk editing, all that good stuff. But so instead of you having to go in, go through your list, go through your spreadsheet, resubmit it over and over again, Edgar does that work for you.
Yeah. So the idea being that, like, for example, say I know that there's a peak time that, or even an off-peak time, I guess, really doesn't matter. Specific time, daily or even different times a day, weekly, whatever, where that's a time where I want to say, hey, go follow me on such and such account. I'm doing cool stuff over there. The new one everybody's doing is Snapchat these days. Or this is a place where, say, I've got 100+ episodes of a podcast. Yeah, and people have not listened to all of them or even heard that some of these people have been on my show. Well, I want to have, a certain cycle through of, every day at this time, shoot out one of my podcast episodes. And those are all in there and created and ready, so I don't have to do it.
Exactly. I mean, I always tell people, like, if all you did with Edgar is just loaded up your old blog posts and you didn't put any other content in Edgar, and you just said, Edgar, send out an old blog post every day, you would dramatically increase the traffic to your blog, which it's kind of funny because almost all of our customers will say, I doubled, I quadrupled my traffic from social. And it's not because we do anything especially magical. It's because if you post links to your blog 4 times as often, guess what happens? You get 4 times the traffic back to your blog. And most people aren't posting a link to their blog every single day, even if they're really on top of it. Like, then they go on vacation for a week. Yep. and then it sits dead, or they forgot to like refill their queue and they got a bit behind, or they got a bit lazy about it and don't do as many updates as they used to. So just having that automatic system to make sure those links back to your site are going out every day earns the ROI for anyone who has a decent amount of content built up.
You systematized it to a way where it alleviates the pain points of everybody who has to spend tons of time on social media, especially in the marketing realm.
That's the idea.
Awesome. Laura, we're kind of near the end of our time here. I would love for you to point people to, 1, where they can meet Edgar, and then 2, where they can follow you.
Yeah, so you can find Edgar at meetedgar.com, meet Edgar on Twitter and on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter at LKR.
Oh, that's right. I love the fact that you have that really tiny Twitter handle. How did you just get that? I mean, did you just
early adopter? It's my social media cred.
Awesome. Laura, it's been awesome talking with you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I know I have a few takeaways from this episode in terms of deleting social media from my phone. I know that there have been times where that has been the thing I've had to do in order to have greater focus in terms of just limiting, having boundaries, not giving myself the option to, quote, kill time on my phone. If I'm going to kill time, why don't I kill time doing something productive like reading a book? There's nothing wrong or non-productive about connecting with people with intention at times that you should, and even in margin time in between, if you're standing in a line, it's nothing wrong with that. Trust me. However, it can easily become addictive and suck all your time. So that was kind of my main takeaway. I'm curious as to see what yours would be. You can leave it there in the comments at beyondthetodolist.com/151. You can also go grab AWeber's free videos and downloadable checklists by going to aweber.com/todo. Again, those free videos and downloadable checklists are going to help you quickly launch the important things to market your creations and even help you create some of those creations. If it's a first online course or YouTube video or podcast episode, or if you want to market those things with a Facebook ad or get more email list subscribers, again, head on over to aweber.com/todo. That's AWEBER.com/todo AWeber.com/TODO. Thanks again to AWeber for supporting this episode of Beyond the To-Do List, and thanks for listening to this episode. I will see you next show. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx.